Ole Miss is in a prime position to land a top quarterback. We'll tell you more.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Locked On Ole Miss podcast is the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there, bringing you the best Rebel coverage every single day. I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member, and we have a loaded show for you today. First of all, recruiting alert, Ole Miss might be getting close to landing Landon Duckworth, and the predictions are rolling in with Zach Berry's RPM calling it just the other day. This quarterback is knocking on the door of the top 100, and when Steve Wiltfong talks about him in his scoop articles, you know he's kind of a big deal. We break down what this commitment could mean for the future of the program. Plus, we take a look at what Ole Miss's schedule could look like if the SEC Big Ten proposal goes through. And spoiler alert, it is awesome. And of course, we preview the Ole Miss versus Vanderbilt matchup this Saturday. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello and shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And for more SEC coverage, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for a second listen. So let's get started. So one thing that happened a couple of days ago that Zach Berry put in an RPM. I think that's what they call their crystal ball, essentially, is an RPM. And in that RPM, he said that Landon Duckworth, he's predicting him to go to Ole Miss with a 65% confidence level. Landon Duckworth said, "They're making me feel special. As soon as I got there, all the coaches ran out of the office and hugged me. Since they offered, we have been talking. Ole Miss is definitely up there for me. Florida State, Georgia, and South Carolina, they're all still lingering, but not at the level that you think it might be at. I like Ole Miss's position here heading into the spring. There's a clear need for an alpha dog type quarterback since the staff opted not to sign a high school quarterback in 2025. Duckworth is the type of signal caller you build around. Ole Miss has made him a major priority, and the blue chip prospect is clearly like what he's heard and seen so far. He's a player that's right on the edge of the top 100, and in some rankings he is. If you look at the consensus, he's national number 109. He's only a 3-star on 3, but 247 has him as the number 66 player in all of the country. ESPN has him as the 119th player in the country, and Rivals has him as the number 26 player in the country. The outlier right now is on 3, and whenever those rankings kind of flip around for him, you can see that he's going to be clearly a top 100 quarterback recruit as well. You know, when you look at the highlights of this player, you can see that he's honestly just a really good type player, somebody that you can build around. And when you get the 6'3" frame, when you get the weight where he is a bigger guy that is going to grow a little bit, but he can make all of the throws. It's telling to me that he starts his highlights with an over route. And that is kind of a standard play that quarterbacks have to make, and proving he can make that throw right off the jump, that works. Because whenever it comes to a flash reel, it's a lot of times a player just running around and making plays happen. I mean, here's a run from Duckworth where he runs for a 100-yard touchdown, basically. This is a guy that can do the dual threat thing really well, and he's really good at it. We talked to Zach Berry earlier in the week about quarterbacks that Ole Miss are getting close and getting interested in. This is before he put the RPM on Landon Duckworth, and he was talking about, hey, every quarterback that Ole Miss is recruiting is a dual threat type quarterback. He is somebody that can run the ball. He's a +1 runner, strong arm throwing the football. That is the modern quarterback and what they look like now. And Landon Duckworth fits that to a T. Now, some other quarterback chatter that is out there as well. Let's start talking about what's going on. Like the quarterbacks that Ole Miss are recruiting, and this is the way this looks, okay, outside of Landon Duckworth. Jonas Williams, we talked about him. He's a quarterback out of Illinois. That's a commitment to Oregon. Oregon is recruiting him, but USC is trending to flip him from Oregon. So the reason that would be important is because of rider lines. And we talked with Zach Berry that Ole Miss is basically classifying rider lines as a 2027 quarterback as opposed to a 2026 quarterback because of his mission work that he's due to do. And if Oregon loses that, they're obviously going to flip their attention over to rider lines. South Carolina is another quarterback in on Landon Duckworth. They're more in on Brady Smeagol. Landon Duckworth seems like a secondary option for them as well. You can see what I mean with the Landon Duckworth stuff. Bulldogs are also a big favorite of Duckworth, Florida State, and then Ole Miss. Those are probably the three schools that Ole Miss is going to have in that little cluster for Landon Duckworth. Good player. Now, Oregon's contingency plan is rider lines. We always talk about that. Like I said, he's a 2027. Oregon will move on to him if they lose Jonas Williams. And, of course, FSU, Gus Malzahn is the offensive coordinator now, is really wanting a Landon Duckworth or a Keyshawn Henderson or even a Dia Bell. So we'll see exactly how that looks and what Florida State is going to do. But they've got some work that they're planning on doing right now. There's a lot of big-name quarterbacks that are being listed, and Ole Miss is in on a lot, and there's a lot of names that people are going to know. They had nuggets in here, nothing really major on Keyshawn Henderson, on Jake Fetty. It's one of those things, and the other name that popped up was Gavin Sidwar, the guy that we focused on yesterday. He made it onto the Steve Wiltfong list as well, so you can see that if a quarterback gets mentioned by Lane Kiffin or gets recruited by Lane Kiffin, he knows what he's looking at because he ends up being one of the headlining quarterbacks in all of the country. And even if you don't know necessarily about him, that much about him, like Gavin Sidwar, you can just understand that he is a good player as well. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of quarterbacks dominoes that need to fall. That's kind of what we're waiting on, is the quarterback dominoes to fall so you can get your guy. Once you get your guy, he can build his class. Whenever that happens, it can start the ball rolling in that direction. Ole Miss needs to get their guy. That's something we're going to watch for over the next coming weeks and months. I figure during spring practice, Landon Duckworth is going to go attend a practice. It just makes sense that he would. There's a practice for 5 weeks on Saturday. They're going to roll out the red carpet and all of that stuff. And from that point, once they get Landon Duckworth, if that domino falls, it's going to be full court press on Tristan Keys and Xavier McDonald and players that would surround this quarterback in the class. Ole Miss has a chance to take a big step in recruiting over the next couple of years. They're going to have to still win on the field, and they're going to have to win in some of these recruiting battles that are going on, but it's getting easier and easier and easier for Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, and that is good to know. So we'll pay attention to this Landon Duckworth stuff over the next couple of weeks and see what happens. You know, the big story of this week is playoff expansion. You know, casual fans are buzzing about automatic qualifiers, but the real ripple effects for Ole Miss could be absolutely huge. Stay tuned to find out why this could be a game changer for the Rebels. You know, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, You can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I feel like I've never missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so we're going to come back, and the story of the week that they're talking about, and it's funny to read and see all of the hot takes that is bouncing around at the moment. And one dead giveaway that you're dealing with a casual fan that don't necessarily know what they're talking about is the entire discussion is about automatic qualifiers. They're trying to sound like they're informed on the topic, but all they're talking about is automatic qualifiers, as if that was the thing that mattered. That does not matter, not even a little bit. The other stuff on the outside of this playoff proposal is what everybody needs to pay attention to. The SEC 9 conference games, the revamping of conference title weekend to have as potentially 4 games over the course of that weekend. I do think it's going to be 3, but that they have that there. The SEC Big Ten Challenge, all of that. But the most important thing, if they do these automatic qualifiers, basically conference games matter more than everything else. Almost exclusively matter, to the point where non-conference games are essentially exhibitions, preseason games. That's what it looks like at the moment. And if that passes, which it likely will, because everybody needs to understand that in 2024, the SEC and Big Ten were the recipients of a memorandum of understanding that said, hey, we're going to make it to where the revenue distribution is a lot slanted, and we're going to make it to where the Big Ten and the SEC just has the right to do whatever they want to in the next television contract, which is 2026 and beyond. Whenever you look at that, that means that the automatic qualifiers are going to happen. They're going to do public opinion. They're going to try and shape everything because, let's be honest, if you're a fan of Texas Tech or Baylor or BYU or the Big 12 or the ACC or Clemson or North Carolina, you do not like hearing that your conference is inferior to the SEC and the Big Ten. Equity is important to you because in your mind, it is there. You like a team that's in that conference. You may not root for that conference, but you like to think that they're playing the same game, even though they're likely not. And monetarily, you can see that. So if these non-conference games cease to matter, you can have things like an SEC Big Ten Challenge, to where a Big Ten team and an SEC team matches up every single year to set that up. And with the SEC going to 9 conference games, the SEC Big Challenge is a 10th game. That leaves 2 non-conference games for teams in the SEC and the Big Ten to set up. At Ole Miss, this is interesting to me because if you say non-conference games do not matter at all for postseason, you can lose them both and you have just as much chance to get the top seed of the SEC teams as you did if you won both of those non-conference games. Those non-conference games are completely irrelevant. If that happens, then it makes no sense for Ole Miss to essentially schedule outside of about a 4-hour bubble, 4 or 5-hour bubble around Oxford, Mississippi. The FCS game is going nowhere until they move that to a spring game and get rid of that spring transfer portal window. The FCS game is going nowhere. So it's going to still happen. So instead of playing Mercer, instead of playing teams from South Carolina, the Citadel, Furman, instead of playing teams like that, why not play Jackson State? Why not play Alcorn? Why not play UT Martin, which is right up the road? Why not play North Alabama? They're an FCS school now. Why not play the schools that are within a nice 4-hour halo of the university, and you could probably get them at a cut rate deal? Because remember, on this schedule, you're also dealing with rev share. So in these non-conference games, you don't want to pay $4 million for a game. You want to get them for $2 million. You want to figure out a way to cut the revenue that's going out so you have enough for the rev share. That's something that we have to pay attention to as well. And the other would be like a Southern Mississippi. I do think Ole Miss and Southern Mississippi need to play. Southern Mississippi to me is no different than Louisiana Monroe, UAB, all of these teams that Ole Miss have been basically going through. They should add Southern Miss to that rotation, to Tulane, to Memphis. I think it doesn't matter. Those non-conference games, it doesn't matter if you lose that game at all. And other teams being excited to play you, that's kind of a perk of you actually being good. So you kind of lose me at that as well. So I made up a little mock schedule, okay? And on that schedule, I took a little bit of this year. I took the ramifications of this Big Ten SEC merger, and I added the Mississippi FCS school in Southern Mississippi to the schedule. And this is what the schedule would look like if that happened. This is after the SEC Big Ten proposal. Let's say the Ole Miss opens up with Alcorn State. I put Alcorn instead of Jackson State because Alcorn's already on the schedule, to be perfectly honest. But Alcorn State's coming to Oxford. They're going to be the first game. Then you go to Kentucky, and then you host Arkansas. Then you host USC. USC comes to Vaught-Hemingway Stadium as a part of the Big Ten SEC Challenge. You host LSU. You host Southern Mississippi. You go to Georgia. You go to Oklahoma. You host South Carolina. You go to Auburn. You host Florida, and you go to Mississippi State. 7 home games. The 7 home games that you're selling season tickets on is Alcorn State, Arkansas, USC, Southern California, LSU, Southern Miss, South Carolina, and Florida. That would be one of the better home tickets that Ole Miss has ever had to sell. This situation to where they break everything up in the Big Ten SEC proposal for the playoffs lets you know exactly how exciting all of this could be. And I am going into this with my eyes open. I realize that this is really exciting for the Big Ten. This is really exciting for the SEC. This is not really exciting for Conference USA. This is not even exciting to the Big 12 or the ACC. But if you are a fan of the Big Ten and the SEC, your lives are about to get remarkably better. And when you add the conference championship wrinkle that they are rumored to be talking about, and like I said, I think it's going to be 3 games because seed number 1 and seed number 2, I think they're still going to be playing a conference title game. But then seed number 3 versus seed number 6, seed number 4 versus seed number 5 in the conference for a playing game for the 3rd automatic qualifier and the 4th automatic qualifier, looking really similar to, honestly, English soccer. It would be an unbelievably exciting moment, and it would make all of the money. All of the money. You're going to sell a completely different TV contract because the SEC Big Ten Challenge is going to be sold separately, and it would not surprise me if that ended up on like TNT. That would be a product that is bought by TNT. It would not surprise me at all if it was on a network that is not attached or affiliated to the other networks. The SEC title game, you add 2 more games to where ESPN is going to do it. You add a 9th conference game, which is going to add the payout from ESPN as well. It's at the point where the rich is getting a lot richer. The athletic budget at Ole Miss, I think this year is $140 million or something like that. It's only going to go up a little bit. Even with the rev share, even with the whole 9 yards, it is going to go up. And while everybody is looking for ways to add revenue streams right now to college football, you look at it, them monetizing the Grove, figuring out how to do that. Right now, they're not raising ticket prices, but we'll see exactly what happens. The odds are they're going to go up as well, but they're going to find potentially another revenue stream in the ninth conference game that is going to supposedly, when you host it, add an extra little bit of home game revenue to it. You got the Big Ten SEC Challenge that you're going to get money from that TV contract. Plus, when you host that game, that's going to be another big time game. And then, of course, the revenue streams that come down, the big time revenue streams that have a chance to be an extremely valuable asset for the Southeastern Conference. It is the conference championship playing games. The casuals are talking automatic qualifiers, 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC and Big Ten. That's not fair. BYU deserves better. Utah deserves better. All of that. And again, I think deserve is the worst word in the English language. But the reality of what's going on, what makes this proposal so good and so fun for Big Ten and SEC fans, which, let's be honest, what is that? 16 SEC, 19 Big Ten teams, and they're probably going to go up in 2031 whenever the next round of conference realignment happens, to where you're likely going to have somewhere in the ballpark of 20-20, which will be about 1/3 of what is FBS right now and most of what was considered Power 5. Whenever that happens, you're going to be in a much, much better situation. Now, the next question, and the question that they should be asking in the Big 12 and the ACC, is, should we just have our own national championship? Have the G5 set it up to where the ACC, the Big 12, and all that, and they create another division within college sports and have a national championship for that. You know, Memphis and Houston, I would watch it. I wouldn't watch it as intently as Ole Miss and Michigan, but I would watch it. Heck, I watched North Dakota State versus South Dakota State. You know, if it's football's on, I usually watch it. But when you look at these schedules, it is absolutely sexy, fantastic of what could be a collateral move for Ole Miss should this Big 12 SEC program go through, like it probably will, because if you want to look at it, the SEC and the Big Ten just need to agree. They don't need consensus. All they have to do is present it to the other athletic directors and presidents. They don't have to listen to a single thing they say, which means this is likely going to happen. Anyway, Ole Miss faces Vanderbilt in a crucial showdown with seeding on the line in the NCAA tournament. The Rebels will take on a desperate Vanderbilt Commodore squad fighting for their tournament lives. They're on the bubble. Don't miss our final breakdown coming up next. All right, Ole Miss takes on the Vanderbilt Commodores, and this is kind of our preview of the game. We're not going in the weeds too much because we've got Tim Thomas coming up tonight. He's going to talk a little bit about the game, and I talked last night about what this game meant to Ole Miss and why Ole Miss was looking to kind of recoup the toughness of that. But we are going to give score predictions and stuff like that for anybody that might be interested in what's going on. I do think the keys of the game are interested in this game. Ole Miss needs to come to play with a ton of urgency after Saturday. They need to come completely motivated as a football team or basketball team. And if they are completely motivated and play defense with a certain level of intensity, which I think they will, I genuinely think they will, that'll be that will go a long way to making people feel better after last Saturday. Number 2, it's a scheduled tweak. Absolutely. Be competitive on the boards versus Vanderbilt. No matter who the opponent is, be competitive. I talked about one of the checklist moments for Ole Miss basketball is be at least or I should say at most, -10 on the boards. Don't get mauled. Be as competitive as you're going to be. You're not going to win those that often, but be competitive. And I think this is going to be a Dre Davis game, as Memorial Gym, as Tim Thomas says, can be difficult to shoot the ball. So the mid-range game could be interesting. Now, it could also be a situation to where Vanderbilt, they're hitting a ton of threes and there's not a lot you can do about that. But if they're not, if it's a bad shooting night, the mid-range game is going to be very important, which I think that Dre Davis is absolutely perfect for. The players to watch out in these games is Dre Davis, obviously. I just talked about that. Sean Padula from the outside. If he is hot, if he gets going, we all saw Marshall Henderson a decade ago hit a 40-foot three-point shot in Memorial Gym. If Sean Padula is on, that is a plus for Ole Miss. And then there's Malik Dia, who Malik Dia, in my opinion, whenever he wants to play bully ball, he really can play bully ball and can do it effectively. Now, Malik Dia is on this list also because he started at Vanderbilt. He's got a little bit of history. There's going to be a little motivation. So Malik Dia in that game against the Vanderbilt Commodores is going to be a big step that he can take. So I'm expecting the bully ball Malik Dia to show up. Not necessarily the Alabama Malik Dia, but I think we're going to see a little bit of bully ball. And when you look at Vanderbilt, they're not the tallest team. They're not the best rebounding team. If Ole Miss gets blown out on the boards in this game, it's going to be kind of weird. So Malik Dia is going to be an important part to kind of play that rebounding edge kind of even. Looking at the score in this game, I do think Ole Miss is going to win the game. Ole Miss 67, Vanderbilt 62. It's going to be a hard-fought game. Vandy has wins over Tennessee at home. They have wins over Kentucky at home. They played Auburn fairly tough for a good period of time until they ran out of gas. Vanderbilt at home is a pretty good team. In fact, they were up by 15 points or something like that in Knoxville against the Tennessee Vols, but they went through a little bit of a scoring drought and got taken advantage of. I think Ole Miss is going to win the game. Ole Miss is a solid basketball team. They're going to get right. I think the intensity, the toughness, all of the stuff that you want to see, you're going to see Ole Miss absolutely do it. So we'll watch the game. We'll have an instant overreaction immediately after. We have Tim Thomas tonight. We're going to have Michael Katz tomorrow morning, and we'll have Tom Vanderford on Sunday and Brian Smith Sunday night. That is the schedule for this weekend. Last night, I guess you could say as you're watching this, went and saw Midland in concert. So I'm recording this a little bit early because in real time, before time, I'm getting ready to go do that. So that is what's going on there. Anyway, take care, everybody. Have fun. And it should be a whole lot of fun for me and for everybody else. So thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast out there. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in all of college sports. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everyone. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.